Welcome to Forte Catholic Radio. We are recording a day early on Monday because I'm going to be... the first reason was that it was Halloween. We're going to be out trick-or-treating with our kids. Now we're trick-or-treating with our kids at like 3 in the afternoon because now, tomorrow, Tuesday, is Game 6 of the World Series because the Astros might win the World Series tomorrow. This is crazy, crazy, crazy. So that's why we're recording early, but you don't care because you're either listening on the podcast on Wednesday or you're listening live on Red Sea Radio or St. Michael Radio on Thursday morning. So welcome in. It's great to be here with you today. You're listening to me in the past. I am now wiser than I was while recording this. So welcome in. We are recording from the Red Sea Radio studios in College Station, Texas. Before we get too much into the show, we got a fun show for you today. We're going to prove how dumb I am. It's going to be absolutely great. But before we do any of that, I just have some Forte Catholic show trivia for you. I'm gonna have Sam and Mackenzie here in studio play along. But what I want you to do while you're listening in your car, on your headphones, on the podcast, on iTunes, or whatever you're doing, I want you to play along, and you can send me a message on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, at Taylor Schroll, SCHROLL. Send me a message and tell me if you beat the people who have been behind the scenes on the show for a very long time. So, first question. Both of these questions are about like my taglines at the beginning and the end of the show. So, at the beginning of every show, for a while, I've yelled, "What's up?" This question's kind of tricky because there are some stages to it. So I'm going to be very specific how I ask this. We are now on episode, I think, 54. I might be wrong on that. You can send me a message, again, telling me that I'm wrong and that I'm stupid, which is what we're proving on today's show. So it fits in perfectly. But we're in the mid-50s on episodes, right? So, Mackenzie.
Yes.
What episode... do you think I started yelling, "What's up?"
Okay.
Or saying at the beginning of the show, or saying "see ya" at the end of the show?
Yes.
Which one do you think happened first?
Well, in my defense, before I even answer, I haven't been on the show for that long.
You do realize like there are other ways to hear it rather than just being here in person, right? Okay.
Okay. But I'm going to guess that Sia came first.
Sia came first.
She stole my answer. That was totally what I was going to say.
Okay. You think it's Sia?
I think it's Sia first.
All right. So you listening at home or driving your car on Thursday morning, what do you think? Good answer. So you are correct.
Yay.
It is Sia. That happened first. So now what episode, we're 50-something episodes in, what episode do you think I started going, "see it," at the end of my show? Sam, we'll start with you.
I'm trying to think if I can remember a time when I was here that you didn't say it. So let's go with episode 15.
Okay.
Dang it, that's what I was going to do.
See, like last time I gave you 2 answers, so getting the same answer is kind of like it's going to happen. There's no way you thought 15.
I was
on the
literally
same
sitting here
page.
going like 15 sounds good, and then Sam was like 15.
So here you were going to say 15. You have to pick now.
Mm-hmm. Do I have to
You
go
win
higher or
if
lower?
if it's lower and you pick 14, you win. If it's higher, and you have to pick 16 and win any of those.
I'm going to guess 16.
16.
I feel like she has a bigger chance with that.
She
Because
does.
there's more numbers.
Yet she's wrong.
Ah.
So this was so surprising to me because I have been on the show every week. A lot of people haven't, but I have. I honestly couldn't remember whether "What's Up" or "See Ya" was first of all. So I went through and kind of did some research because we were kind of joking about it behind the scenes on the show a couple weeks ago. Episode 4 was the first time I said, "Say it." Episodes 2 and 3, I spoke it. I just said, "See ya," or like something stupid or whatever, right? But really early, episode 4. Okay, so yelling "What's up?" And I've already told you this was kind of a transformation. So what is the episode, Sam Shepard, that I first yelled "What's up?" at the beginning of the show?
Episode 7.
Episode 7. Okay. Mackenzie, what do you think?
How about 10?
10. Okay. So y'all think this was pretty early. So before I give the answer, on episode 2, I started not yelling, but I said, "What's up?"
Okay.
It's like, "What's up? Welcome to Forte Catholic."
Right.
Not really cool. Episode 4, I added a little bit more inflection on the "What's up?" What's up? Right. Episodes around 10 and 13, I got a little bit louder, but not quite the yelling like I do now. On episode 20, I tried to yell for the first time, but you know that thing where like you're trying to go for something, but you're not quite sure if you should?
You're like holding back.
It was completely half-hearted. It sounded terrible. So on episode 20, that's what happened. Between episodes 30 and 35 is when the yelling "What's up?" like really morphed into what it is today. Like, that's crazy. That was only 20 weeks ago. So yeah, that's it. So none of you got close, but you said 10.
I said 10.
Mackenzie said 10. So Mackenzie wins.
Yay! That's even.
So good job. So we'll see. Listeners, as you send me a message, did you beat the producers or did they beat you? And again, I just want everybody to know, like, you don't have to be in the studio to listen to the show. You can listen live on the radios on Thursday morning in Bryan College Station and in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Or you can listen anytime you want. If you missed the show on podcast, go to fortecatholic.com/radio. So here's how I want to like really get into the show today. This is absolutely hilarious. I was texting a buddy of mine who's a police officer, who's an officer here locally. He texted that he was listening to the show. He listened to the show that I announced that we had our baby. So this was 2 weeks ago. So the on that show, if you missed it, go listen to it, Mackenzie. And on that show, I was like, yeah, a lot happened this week. Like before I said that we had a baby, I said a lot happened this week. This happened. I beat a video game. The Astros won. Blah blah blah. And then kind of teasing, being stupid, right? And saving the biggest thing for last. So he texted me, didn't congratulate me on the baby. He congratulated me on beating Cuphead, the video game, right? So he's kind of playing along with the joke. And he's listening to the show. I'm going to give you 2 quotes from this officer that texted me. These are my 2 favorite quotes about the show of all time. I've gotten some pretty good like reviews and stuff. You can always review the show on iTunes. It helps us get more people listening. That'd be fantastic. But you will be hard pressed to beat these two sentences. He says, "I bet I'm the only cop driving around harassing folks that listens to your show." So the fact that a police officer is driving around like giving people tickets and like, it's so funny because I told somebody this and they were like, somebody that hadn't listened to the show before, they were like, "Is your show like angry? Like, are you like riling him up?" And I was like, "I don't know, maybe." I do get angry every now and then, but then this next quote was, "Lots of tickets have been issued while listening to your show." I just think it's hilarious. He's listening to me rant and rave about something that happened in church, or like, that was them speeding. Sam. I used to revoke Jake, the old producer's talking privileges. Sam's about to lose like sound effect privileges. That was terrible. So the fact that somebody is driving in their police car, listening to my show, they turn their lights on, pause the show, get out of the car, go out, license and registration, please, give somebody a ticket, and then get back in the car, turn off the lights, and turn back on the show might be my favorite image of anybody listening to the show of all time. So that's all fluff. We've gotten 10 minutes into the show and hadn't talked about anything, but I just thought it was hilarious, some fun stuff. So our topics for the day. Here's what we're doing. I'm going to talk a little bit about a retreat that I'm speaking at this weekend. Give you kind of a little sneak peek into that. But the main thing that we're doing today is like 2 or 3 months ago, I had you guys, the listeners, shoot me messages of like topics or questions that you wanted for the show. And I got about 15 or so of them. And I answered about 12 of them, I think, over the next couple of weeks. Like I did like 2 or 3 every week. But there was a couple that I'm just not smart enough to answer. So here we are 2-3 months later. I am not always quick, but I always come through. It may take me months, weeks, years, but I always come through. So what I did back then was I booked a couple of people to come on the show to answer these questions that I'm too dumb to answer. Like, I'm too done. I'm just done, which is pretty much what happened when I tried to study these topics. I'm just done. I'm too dumb. I'm going to walk away now. So we've got a call from Rome. That's how you know you've made it as a Catholic radio show. We've got a call in from Rome. A buddy of mine from undergrad is now studying at this fancy college that he'll tell us about. Like, again, too smart for me, so I can't even pronounce the name of it, right? Because I'm dumb and because I don't know Italian. But he's going to come on and share about the natural law and about logic, like as concepts, as fields of study. And then Becka Landry, who works with us, who's been on the show before, is going to come on and talk about metaphysics. She's a student here at Texas A&M. We record in the Catholic Center at Texas A&M. So she's going to come on and talk about metaphysics, what it is, because I took a metaphysics class and I just barely passed and I have no idea what's going on. But before we do that, before we prove how dumb I am, I want to do something I'm good at, just so I can feel good about myself. So this weekend, I'm going to be speaking at the high school retreat that Ablaze Ministries is putting on for 4 parishes here in our area. And the theme is what, Sam?
Rest in his peace.
Rest in his peace. Who is he?
Jesus.
The Jesus, right? He's my favorite Jewish man. So in the Gospels, Sam keeps muting herself. I'm going to continue asking you questions, so you might just unmute your mic there.
Okay.
Sam, in the Gospels, you should have studied this
I probably didn't.
in preparation for the retreat.
I'm not the MC. It's fine.
So you don't have to know anything? Okay. So that's another thing. We'll talk about that when I'm your boss tomorrow. Okay. So
Just tomorrow.
I'm not your boss on this. I am, but not about
This just
work.
got confusing.
Whatever. I'm your boss everywhere you go, just for a different reason. Okay. So how many times in the gospel does Jesus say, "Peace be with you"? In all 4.
I know we've pulled out 1, 2, 3, 4 of them.
I'll give you a hint. You're not remotely close.
So a lot higher, because the Lord says peace a lot. He just knows how unpeaceful we are. So he probably says it like 300 times.
That's way too much.
You just told me it was so much.
It is very far away. Just not 300
He said
away.
it 150 times.
Oh my gosh. I can't tell you how funny that is that you just said that, because I just shared this content with the guy who's like leading the talks for the weekend.
Right.
And I asked him the same question, and he said 150. Sam, you're dyslexic. I made the joke behind your back, and I'm not telling you. I was like, it's 150 if you're Sam, because it's 105. So,
dang it.
Okay, so I just offended all the people who listen that are dyslexic. All 2 of you. I apologize.
There's more than 2.
I don't think there's more than 2.
Okay, maybe not.
Dylan, who's been on the show before, and you. It's ridiculous. Like, Ablaze Ministries is like a haven for dyslexic people. Like, we have
and
more.
They're all my friends.
We have more dyslexic people on staff than anybody else ever. And I absolutely love you guys. And I make fun of you because I love you. Sarcasm is my love language. So, do you feel loved, Sam? She won't answer. Okay, good. So, this week, now that I've offended you, we're going to talk about how to find peace in tough situations, like the situation where you feel like you're being made fun of, somebody's talking bad about you on a radio show, these types of situations, right?
Yes.
So, and it's called Rest in His Peace, like R.I.P., just similar to, or like, kind of invoking this whole Halloween type theme, right? So, I'm going to be talking about, and then it's like a 20-minute talk, and we have 3 minutes left. So, I'm going to talk just about just like one little piece of it. Thinking about, like, what do people think are scary on Halloween? I'm going to show them a picture of the clown from It, and Sam said she's not going to listen to my whole talk because of that.
I did say that.
And you're going to listen to it anyway because I'm your boss everywhere. Okay, so thinking about scary moments, like when Jesus died
Mhm.
like Friday and Saturday, like before he came back. Like the disciples were up in a room filled with fear.
Yep.
Like fear, doubt, worry, all these things, because they thought like their life just died. Like they watched him die, right? Or they ran away from him dying, one of the two.
Right.
So like they are so worried about this, so much anxiety. And the Jesus, the guy who died the day, 2 days before, he walks in the midst of their fear and says,
What's
"Peace."
up?
What's up? No, he didn't do that for a few more episodes. Okay. So he walks in and he says, "Peace be with you." And I was looking at some Christian art to like project during this. There's one piece and it says like they're all like praying and like being all pious and stuff. And that's how like Christian art thinks they react. Here's how I think they reacted when Jesus walked into the room and said, "Peace be with you." Exactly. Like a dude was dead and he just walked through a wall and says, "Peace be with you." So you know what Jesus says right after that? Again, "Peace be with you." Like he says it twice because they're not feeling this peace, right? But he comes in and he says, like, the peace that I have given, like this victory that I have won, I want to give you this peace. And it's so interesting because if you think about it, like in the midst of their, like the scripture says that they are afraid. They're in this room because of fear. What do they need in that moment? Peace. Like if you think about, like, what do you think, if I wouldn't have told you that, if I just would have said, like, what do you think Jesus said the first thing he tells his disciples? "I told you so." Like, that's probably what I would think, but that's probably not going to make it scriptures. But it's probably something like, "I love you. I came back for you. I'll always be here for you," right? Those are all true things. But what he says, he comes to them in the midst of their fear and says, "Peace be with you." So in the midst of your trials, in the midst of the things that are driving you crazy, like Jesus wants to come in and share peace with you. How he does that is through like just going to spend time with him. Other times he appears to them after he is resurrected and he just spends time with them. He eats breakfast with them. He just wants to be a part of your daily life. So spend some time with him, especially if you're in a time where you don't feel his peace. He wants to give it to you, and he will. We'll be right back with our friend from Rome, Adrian Charles. All right, we are back for segment 2 of Forte Catholic for the evening, and we are doing a first in Forte Catholic history. We are talking to someone who's not even in this country. We are talking to a friend of mine named Adrian Charles, who is FaceTimed in from Rome. Adrian, can you hear us all right? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I can hear you.
Good. I thought I had to yell louder since you're a few countries away, but I guess with FaceTime we don't have to do that, right?
There you go.
I did notice that when we set this up that you didn't want to do FaceTime video, you just want to do FaceTime audio. I'm a little offended.
I'm just worried about the Wi-Fi, making sure that I can get across.
Yeah, no, I totally get it, but it made for a nice, easy joke. So, so a couple of months ago, in the midst of you preparing to become a father for the first time, we'll get into that. But I got asked some questions by my audience, and there were about 3 topics that I was like, I'm too dumb to answer any of these, so I need to bring in the big gun. So I decided to bring you, the big gun, in. And I didn't actually realize something until today when I went back and looked at the notes from this conversation. The person who suggested these topics are a lady named Monica Charles. Have you heard of her?
Yeah, I think so. Married her a little over a year ago.
I didn't even see the irony that she asked the tough questions, and I was like, I don't know, let's ask someone else, and the someone else is her husband. So yeah, you and I and Monica went to undergrad together at Incarnate Word. We had some good times. I had a very special song that I wrote for you back in the day.
I remember.
I know you remember. It's a little thing called bullying, and I did it a lot with you. But it was this song. A lot of people have heard the Father Abraham song, right? Father Abraham had many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham. Well, Adrian, you were like discerning, your vocation, whether you should get married, whether you should go in the priesthood. And we all thought you'd be a great priest. or a great husband and father, wherever you went. But we were kind of like jokingly pressing you towards the priesthood. So of course you got married. So I wrote the song. Father Adrian had no sons because he entered the priesthood. I'm not one of them, and neither are you because he is celibate. Okay, so and then I'm messaging you today, and I realized that you truly are Father Adrian now. Like, you're a dad. So now your daddy Adrian but still had no sons because you had a daughter. That's the new song. So, congratulations on becoming a father. How old is she?
7 weeks, and thank you.
7 weeks. That's amazing, man. I'm so happy for you guys. I've seen pictures. It's been really nice. So let's dive into this. You know this stuff well because you are a smart man. You've been around the church for a long time, and you are actually studying something smarter than me. What are you studying, and where are you doing it?
I am right now finishing up my bachelor's in sacred theology at the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas in Rome. Next semester, I'll be hopefully starting the license and working towards a doctorate, hopefully in the next few years.
Dr. Father, Dr. Daddy. That's awesome. So what are you studying again? I think you said it, but I missed it.
It's a bachelor's of sacred theology.
Cool.
And we focus a lot on the writings of St. Thomas Aquinas.
Gotcha. And I'm sure he has a few things to say on the natural law and logic, right?
Definitely.
So one of the other topics that your wife asked us to cover is donuts. Does he have anything to say about donuts in any of his scholarly writings?
I don't think so.
Okay. So
I think he got to experience those.
Here's the deal. We're going to agree that I wanted to talk about it, but you didn't. So you can tell your wife that we didn't talk about it on the show because of you. How's that?
Got it.
Okay, cool.
Will do.
So let's talk about natural law. And we're going to talk about two of these things. We have about 13, 14 minutes together. So we're just going to cut it in half. Like, if you wanted to give us... okay, my audience isn't stupid. Well, most of my audience isn't stupid. Some of my audience is like me, and they're kind of dumb. So why don't you give us like an intro into these two things? So what is the natural law?
Okay, well, what we first want to take into consideration is when we think of the word law, we don't really want to think of it how we do today, especially in politics. A lot of times that'll bring a negative aspect to this discussion. So for Aquinas, he bases the doctrine of natural law on his understanding of God and his relation to creation. So he's creator, we are created. So he first asks if there's an eternal law. And he talks about an eternal law because, of course, he's established that God is eternal. And so he gives this definition of law. Law is a dictate of reason from the ruler for the community he rules. So God created everything. He is the ruler of the entire universe. And what we mean by this eternal law is that he orders everything. He puts everything in its place and it moves it. He is the first mover. So this is what the eternal law is. He then moves on and asks, is there law in the ruled, those who he puts in place, that which he puts in place? And he says yes. Now, natural law is participation in the eternal law by the rational creatures, so namely human beings, since we are the rational creatures.
Most of us.
Yeah, yes, most of us. Natural law is but an extension of this eternal law. So God ordains all of us to happiness, this happiness which is the beatific vision. He wants this for us. And he does this by implanting a general knowledge and an inclination for goodness. The natural law is a fundamental principle that is in our nature. It is a part of us. And according to Thomas Aquinas, human beings have an innate habit whereby they reason according to what he calls first principles. What this means is that we use these first principles to act, to understand things. For example, the law of non-contradiction, which kind of goes into logic a little bit. But the law of non-contradiction basically says that one thing cannot be and not be at the same time. And these first principles, we do not establish. We actually depend on them. These are things that we cannot prove in any way. So according to Aquinas, all human actions are governed by these general principles. And in terms of acting, this foundational principle is to do good and avoid evil. Now, there's a little caveat here, because we naturally desire good. God wants our happiness. He wants us to desire these goods. But we, being humans, we may think we desire something good, but it may not be very good. Or it might be good, but we might take it to the excess, and it actually becomes unvirtuous.
Yeah,
It becomes a vice.
Yeah, it's interesting because like a couple of months ago, like it was actually right around the time that we booked you to come on. I actually went to a session on natural law because I was too dumb to talk about it. I wanted to at least have some kind of background to have a conversation with you on it. And I like that last part that you said about how like it's kind of like that old idea of like that God's law was written on our hearts. Like there are certain things that are true no matter if we ever got the Bible or not. Like murder is wrong, like these kinds of things. And so there is some kind of it seems like there's some kind of connection between like the 10 Commandments and like how we're supposed to live and this natural law. So when you're studying these things, how does this knowledge of the natural law like help you to live out your faith?
Well, it helps me understand, first of all, God a little more. Of course, God is infinite and we can't understand him completely, but it helps me to get to know him better, and it helps me to know myself better, knowing that there is a certain way to live that God has placed in our hearts, that sometimes we struggle to live out, but there's hope there, and we know that it is a part of our life. It's a part of the universe. It's a beautiful thing to think that when God created everything, there was an order to everything, and we are part of that order. And in our minds, our hearts, our souls, there is that order that we are called to follow. And that's such a beautiful thing to think, to know.
Yeah, I've heard some things too, just like in like some common things that pop up like in the news or in our culture, that I hear people say, like with abortion, like abortion is against the natural law, or like homosexual marriage is against the natural law. There are these things that it's not necessarily like proving these things with scripture or like sharing beliefs based on scripture, but on the natural law. So you were saying like that it's something that is true because God made it, and he's the ruler of all these things. So how does the natural law help you in your understanding or your explanation of some of these like touchy subjects?
Well, it helps me in understanding what is that God desires. And within these touchy subjects, for example, like abortion, it helps to point people in a direction that perhaps allows them to think a little bit more about the subject, that it's not just about us, one of the best ways to kind of understand this is people's understanding of freedom. A lot of time people think freedom is about doing whatever you like, but true freedom is about doing God's will. That is true freedom. So it can help in many different ways like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like you said at the beginning, like God wills our, like he wants us to be happy. And like eventually, like with the beatific vision, seeing him face to face. But like these laws are meant to, like, this is what's going to make you and the rest of my people happy. So speaking of thinking more, let's talk about logic. I've heard the word logic and I know it means something about thinking, but I have no idea what the study of logic is. So why don't you give us a little introduction into that?
Sure. Logic actually comes from ancient Greece, so to speak. There was all these studies. Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas takes it from Aristotle.
What a thief!
And uses it, right? And basically, logic is concerned with the act of reasoning, which means it's about thinking about something. The best way to kind of explain it is it's a tool. It's a tool to help us think about things. For example, in talking about natural law, there's kind of a natural way of going about it. And logic allows us to kind of go through this process to enable us to proceed without error, confusion, or unnecessary difficulty. We're going from one step to the next in a process that so we don't get confused, basically. It allows us to search for the truth and be clear about it. It allows us to think about something in an orderly way. And again, we use the first principles to approach this subject or to think about things. We know by nature that something cannot be and not be at the same time, and we move forward with it. So that's kind of a bit about logic. It helps us also to get from something we know, like I just said, to something that we don't know. For example, God revealed himself. He revealed many things as a Father, as Son, and as the Holy Spirit. But there are other things to deal with. And so he gave us this revelation. And because we have reason, we can move forward and use our thinking, our reason, along with faith. And so this is logic is basically a tool to help us in our faith and in our theology to further it.
Me and logic have that in common. We are both tools. So, like with logic, we want to be thinking correctly. You said it helps us to think correctly and to search for the truth. We all know that I need to think a little bit better. And I think everybody listening is searching for the truth. So, like, what are some practical ways, or either some practical ways that we use logic, or like an example of how we've used logic to get to a certain revelation about God?
Well, some practical ways for using logic is think about Thomas Aquinas. Think about the Summa Theologiae. He starts with what is sacred doctrine. He starts with then goes on to the existence of God, and little by little goes on and talks about the attributes of God. Who God is. He talks about man. He talks about the angels. He goes in this process to discover more about God and creation. So that's kind of how we use logic. We can use it in evangelization. Think about when we meet somebody either on the street or in our parish. That perhaps they're dealing with some kind of debate. They're not understanding certain parts about the faith. Being able to form a good argument that works properly to allow them to think through it could be very helpful. And it also helps us order our own lives. as we talked with natural law and talking about the goods that we desire, and sometimes we maybe do it in excess or the complete opposite direction. We can use logic, help us think through temptation.
Yeah, totally, man. Hey, thanks for coming
Might
on.
be the
Thanks for sharing this stuff with us, man. I do appreciate it. I think one of the best things that we can learn, like you kept going back to Aquinas, like one of the best ways to think is to learn the process from these great people that we've had in the church. So, hey, Adrian, thanks for coming on. Real late over in Rome. You're like hours and hours ahead of us. It's the middle of the night. Thanks for coming on and spending some time with us and share my love with your baby and your wife. We are going to be right back with our third and final segment of Forte Catholic for the evening with Becka Landry. Alrighty, welcome back to Forte Catholic, our third and final segment of the day. And the second segment of the day called Taylor Isn't Smart Enough to Answer Listener Questions. Because if you're just tuning in, a few months ago, I had a bunch of listeners ask questions on social media. I got maybe 15 of them. I went through about 12 in the next month. And there were 3 or 4 of them that I just couldn't do on my own. I'm not smart enough. I either never took a class or never learned anything about it, or I took the class and almost failed it and barely passed it to get a degree. That's the class that we're going to be talking about here today. Becka Landry is here. She has been on the show before. She's a lady that needs an introduction. So, Becka, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Yeah, just got out of class and I'm actually taking philosophy of religion, and so it kind of works out that we're talking about that today, philosophy a little bit. But yeah, I'm doing great.
Cool. So you were in class, which means you're a student where?
At Texas A&M.
Is that how you're required to say it?
No.
There's this thing called midnight yell that midnight the night before a football game, everybody goes out and yells at each other on the football field, right?
Yeah.
It's not really yelling at each other. They're yelling at the other team, but they're not there yet. So I don't get it. I didn't go to A&M, so I don't quite get it. But that's how they yell. Texas A&M is the best.
It's not a creepy whisper, but okay.
Everybody locally just tuned out. I hate this guy.
Yep.
What is it? It's fine.
They're calling you what's called
LSU.
a 2%er, and it has nothing to do with milk in the way that you would think, but
I think it has something to do with how I voted or something. Or is that
we're not even.
Is that 1%er?
We are not even going there.
I'm not quite sure. So, last segment, we talked to Adrian Charles in Rome about natural law and logic, and I'm not logical enough to understand those. I did take a metaphysics class in grad school, and it was actually a prerequisite. I'm not even smart enough to say prerequisite. Prerequisite.
I'll help you out. It was a prerequisite.
See, that's why you're here, because you're just smarter than me, but I should be good at talking, and that's the one thing I'm supposed to be good at, and I'm not. So I took this class, but it was an undergrad level class in grad school. I needed to take these 2 philosophies to do the program or whatever. I took it once, and it was a tough class, and there was some extenuating circumstances. I took a second job in that time, and I had a second baby in that time. So I was you know what? I just can't do this metaphysics stuff right now. But the good people that listen to Forte Catholic want to know what metaphysics is, and you said what you're in class now, but what are you studying? What are you trying to get your degree in if you end up passing?
I plan on getting my degree in philosophy. It took me a long time to get to that point because the typical opinion of a philosophy degree is I would like to feed my children and live in a decent house, so I'm not going to major in that. But honestly,
trying to get that MRS degree, huh?
Yeah, that's what some people are doing. But I just love philosophy. I love thinking, and I love arguing, and I love just the things that you can learn in philosophy. And that's what I've decided. And I was particularly drawn to metaphysics when I started in philosophy. I actually didn't know what it was. So then I bought Aristotle's book called Metaphysics because it had one of those really soft covers. It was really great. I actually haven't finished the book, but I do love it. And quite literally, when you translate metaphysics, it means after physics. So it's studying the things that you just can't study with science. It's those things that go beyond physical science. So it's more or less the study of the existence of things. And so it's this very conceptual thing that you got to study.
Yeah, see, I wasn't very good at physics. So then we went
Neither was I.
to after physics, and I was really struggling. I barely get the pre-physics, like before physics stuff. Like I'm still on like a
Like
fifth grade.
geometry.
Like history and English, like I was good at, but I'm on like a fifth grade level science. So like I'm just not very smart. So we've got you on to come on to the show to talk about these things and to teach me and to share with the audience what metaphysics is prerequisite.
There you go.
Prerequisite metaphysics. To share with us what the heck this means. What does it have to do with our faith? And I think the story of you getting booked to come on is actually pretty funny because the only 2 times you've ever come on the show, you just happened to be around. Like you came on when we did the Ministry Madness.
Yep.
And I was at a retreat when I had the idea, and you were like, "Oh, I have great people for this." And we talked about it. You came on the show and talked about that. And then I think we were in the office or something, and I was talking about like, "Oh, people ask these questions."
It's a Facebook status.
And I'm like, "I'm too stupid for this." And Becca's like, "I'll do it." Like she's just around, and here she is. So, so metaphysics is after physics. That makes no sense to me because I'm dumb. So what, like, give us an intro, like, if you had to teach somebody, and I want you to do this.
Okay.
And I want at least one listener to do this.
Okay.
The next time you're in a 1-minute elevator ride, I want you to turn to the person next to you and explain to them what metaphysics is. So teach us how to do that, Becca. Ready, set, bing!
All right. So I'm going to do a little bit of an explain like I'm 5 years old type of thing. By after physics, kind of like what I was saying earlier, it means those things that science just cannot explain. And so when you're studying existence, a lot of times that is studying, arguments for the existence of God and how did God create these things, or maybe it's studying evolution and like how did things, but like not just, macroevolution, how do we get from one animal to the next, but how did things come into existence? And that's a hard thing to study because you can't, do scientific experiments and just come up with the answer. And so there's a lot of philosophers who spend years in their lifetimes studying metaphysics because it's just something that it's not hard science. So it's something that's you just have to have a little bit of faith sometimes when it comes to that. And so looking at different arguments for the existence of God, different theories of evolution and creation, and it's kind of like that, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to step off the elevator with you because I've actually I'm intrigued by what you have to say. So I'm stepping off the elevator, and my follow-up question is, I don't get it.
That's a statement, not
That
a
is a question. I'm also not very good with words.
I don't get it?
I'm Ron Burgundy. Or what I hear you saying is that this is like proving the existence of God without using the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
You could do that?
Yeah.
I thought you had to be like, oh, this is John's gospel, but people who don't read like the Bible don't like God, that sort of thing, right?
People who don't believe in the existence of God probably don't believe in the
existence of the Bible. The Bible does not exist.
It's not divine.
So this whole metaphysics thing, because I want people to get a grasp, and I want to get a grasp of it. What metaphysics is for, because we're talking about it being after physics. We're talking about it being understanding things that we can't understand with science. So, like, before we even get to the proofs for the existence of God, what are some examples of what metaphysics is studying? What are you learning about these kind of things? Because I think I'm starting to get the concept, but what are some examples? Going to be like, okay, that's metaphysics.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to pinpoint specific things because there's so many things underneath that, but the biggest one that I am interested in is the existence of God, studying that, studying things like the Big Bang Theory, studying things like
the TV show on CBS.
Yes, Taylor.
Okay.
The TV show.
That cannot be explained through science.
No, it can't.
Why people think that is funny cannot be explained by anyone.
Oh my gosh.
Stupid show.
but things like time and space, so as concepts, if you were to try and explain to me what time is, I seriously doubt you could explain it except by saying you don't have enough of it. Or when it comes to space, what is space? There's a lot of theories about space and about time, but explaining what they are and how they came into being, that's those are some of the things that metaphysics tackles.
Yeah, again, not smart enough to figure this stuff out. So let's get into the stuff that I've actually might have heard before, because I think I slept through this part of the class. So the existence of God, because this stuff gets really interesting. So without the Bible, so this will be helpful for people who are driving around, listening on the podcast, on the radio. How can you prove? How did Aristotle prove? How did the people who are metaphysically smart? How can you prove the existence of God without using the Bible or the Catechism or tradition?
Yeah. There are three main types of arguments for the existence of God. There's the cosmological argument, the ontological argument, and the teleological argument. When it comes to those three, the ontological argument, if anybody who was not interested in philosophy heard it, they would be like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. This is stupid.
That's what I say in almost every moment in that class that I took.
Yeah, I believe
that. This is stupid. and like, I was saying, this is stupid, it doesn't make sense. But really what I was saying was, I'm too stupid for this to make sense.
Yeah, I mean, that is probably the hardest one to get your mind around. But the one that I kind of want to talk about is the teleological argument, which is easiest explained through an analogy. So it's kind of like, I mean, I'll just read this right here, that there's three premises. So it says, 1, machines are produced by intelligent design. I think that everybody can agree with that. Like if you find a watch, I'll use that example in a couple minutes. Like if you find a watch, it's pretty easy to understand someone has designed this for a purpose. The second premise.
I wish watches came through the Big Bang. Bam! Watch. Whoa!
I mean, time did.
So cool.
Oh my gosh!
It would help my wallet. It would help my wallet a lot. Bam! Watch. Bam! New iPhone.
That would help a lot of people's wallets. Man, I mean, little mini bangs everywhere. Well, anyway, premise 2. The universe resembles a machine, meaning that like if you were to look at the universe, it works in certain ways with other parts of the universe. That there is a purpose in a way for the universe. So it resembles this machine. Therefore, premise 3, probably the universe was produced by intelligent design. So that's an analogy of it, and that doesn't necessarily prove the existence of God.
But probably.
But probably. I mean, it's kind of one of those things. The teleological argument, I mean, teleos or telos, it has to do with like a means to an end, right? So it has a purpose. And there's this philosopher named William Paley. I love the way that he writes because it's so simple. And he says, if I was walking across a path and I bumped into a stone and I asked where it came from, I mean, I could like maybe find a reason, but like rocks are really hard to understand like what their purpose is. But if I was going across that same path and I found a watch laying on the floor of a forest, looking at it, I know that it has a purpose, and I know that there's something that it was made for, and therefore someone had to make it for that purpose.
And you were the first person to find the crime scene.
Oh my gosh. Or, just somebody just dropped it, I guess.
Yeah,
that could happen. It doesn't say it's a nice watch.
Probably.
It doesn't say it's it could be a Walmart watch. Anyway. So if you were to come across that watch, you would know like there's a purpose for this. There was someone who designed it, who made it for its own purpose. And when we look at the universe, maybe we can't specifically say, oh, the universe was created for this. But all the things within the universe work together seemingly for a purpose. And if we keep following that logic back and we say, oh, well, a human being must have made this watch for a purpose. Well, then what was that human being made for? And maybe he was made to be a watchmaker or whatever other thing. Then someone must have had to create him, and that would be his parents. And then those parents had to be created by their parents. And you keep following that back, and then you follow macroevolution back even more. And eventually we get to the Big Bang and we're like, what's before the Big Bang? And no one can figure that out. But that's where Christianity kind of like, it's been woven through everything, but it steps in, and that's where faith is. And so you have to believe that something made the Big Bang happen because the purpose of the Big Bang was to bring about the universe that we have. And if it has a purpose, then like it's saying here, probably, like logically speaking, if it has a purpose, it must have had an intelligent designer. And so when we talk about the teleological argument, it's like the universe has a means to an end, whether or not we know it. And there must have been a designer who designed that universe for its end, for its means to that end. And that's kind of like where that, proof for the existence of God comes from.
It's an interesting thing because a lot of times people are like, prove that God exists. And I'm like, you prove that he doesn't exist. And it's this thing that people want, like absolute certainty. 100% God is real or God isn't.
Right.
But like theology, philosophy, like all of these things have some degree of faith. And like there's this saying that's like a Christian man talking to an atheist is like, I've studied these things and there's all this evidence pointing to the existence of God. Most likely there is a God, like from all these proofs, right? Logically we can get there. And then like what he says is, you think that I have faith and I'm able to believe this. He says, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist because there's so much more proof that there's a God than that there isn't a God. So we got about 2 minutes left here. What, like, other than the proof of the existence of God and these things that we can get to logically that can help us in discussions with our non-Christian friends or people that we meet, what has studying metaphysics done for your faith life?
I think that in discovering these arguments for the existence of God, thinking about time and its existence and motion and its purpose, has made me just appreciate God even more for who he is. Because when I create something, when I like paint something or take a picture of something and I think it's really beautiful and I want to show it to other people, imagine like how much more beautiful God's creation is. And he makes it so intricately and everything has a purpose. And like the fact that we have time is actually so beautiful. And the fact that we have motion and like perfect motion. And I'm a huge fan of space. I love space. And like we can look at the stars and we can see things beyond our own planet. Just like all of that beauty has made me appreciate God and his work more than I ever thought that I could. And so it's increased my faith in him, because if the God who can speak a word and create the universe, speak a word and breathe stars, cares enough to create me, then he must love me a lot. And he deserves my time, as little as it is.
You know what I learned from metaphysics?
Nothing.
That pretty close. What I learned from metaphysics is that God is good. But because he gave us so many ways to understand him. I understand the Bible a lot more than I understand metaphysics, because that's the way that he speaks to me. But I think these things are very helpful, because there are some people, a lot of people come to God through experience, right? And like I think that's primarily has been my experience. I came to him through encountering him and then learning more, like some philosophy stuff, but primarily through the church's teachings and these kinds of things. Right. But I have friends who, like, scientifically were just like, let's prove the God, and they came through metaphysics. They came through these kinds of discussions. So, Becka, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Once and for all, you got to prove that you're smarter than me on a radio show. It is recorded, and I'm going to burn this tape to the ground whenever we are done here. So, where can people get connected with you? How can they follow you?
Oh man, the social media that I use the most probably is Facebook. So if you just look up Becka, Becka Landry, it's like laundry without a U. You can find me on there. You can email me if you feel like it. It's Rebecca, spelled like the biblical way, REBEKAH, @ablazeyouth.org, and I would happily answer any questions that you have.
Laundry without the U.
That's how I explain it to people.
I can't do laundry without you. Thanks for coming on. We'll see you next week.
All right, thanks.